Greetings and welcome to the Women in Fire radio show. Today we will be talking about technology in the fire service, how it's changed the fire service. Thank you to Fire Engineering for allowing Women in Fire to be part of the radio show series. I'm Lisa Baker and I am the Southwest Trustee for Women in Fire. Today I have Kat, who works in Evans Fire District, which is in the Denver, Colorado area, and Deputy Chief Heather Mozdean, who is the Deputy Chief of Operations in the Fremont, California Fire Department. So, the introduction of technology in the fire service has revolutionized the way emergency services operate. Technologies such as AI, drones, and robotics are being utilized to enhance operational efficiency and safety. These technologies are being adapted in various ways. Technology has significantly transformed firefighting by enhancing safety, response times, and increasing operational efficiency through advanced equipment and data-driven tools. Some key technology advances is wearable technology. Modern firefighter gear now includes wearable devices that monitor vital signs and environmental conditions, which helps improve firefighter safety. Drones and thermal imaging, digital alerts and CAD systems, satellite technology, and so on and so on. So, my first question is, we now hear a lot about chat, GPT, and AI. We hear more and more about it, and we also hear some issues with it. So what effect has this had on the fire service for both good and bad?
I know at least in my department, we have utilized ChatGPT to make like hiring flyers and just help communications and like social media look a little bit cleaner, which is really nice because that's something that we have to do and put time and effort into. But ChatGPT makes it a little bit easier for the people who manage those projects because I work for a small department. Everyone has so many different tasks to juggle, but it's also a really great resource for finding fire information, or at least for looking where to start or summarizing data, because there's so much data out there now that it helps kind of condense it all together. It's a good starting point if you're looking for information, and especially with the sources that it provides you, you can then dive deeper into those sources. So I know it's a really controversial thing right now, ChatGPT and AI as a whole, but I think there's some really great uses for it in the fire service because of the large amount of data out there now. It takes a really long time and it kind of condenses it and makes it easier to access for everyone.
Yeah, Kat, I agree. Any of those sort of AI search, I don't even know what they're really called, but any of those that have the ability to search data and then return responses is a total game changer. Almost like, in Kat, I don't know how old you are, but I know that for Chief Baker and I, in our lifetimes, we've seen the internet come along, and now, and then Google become this incredible search engine where now you could find information so fast. And then with cell phones, I mean, I remember a day where there weren't people sitting at the table using cell phones. And, when somebody spoke, you kind of trusted what they said. If they were a reliable source then it became, you could just Google it and find that information. Well, this is just one step further. Not only are you able to search up results, but it's returning it to you in a cohesive manner. And to your point about like creating flyers, it's been great for us. We're working on policy, and so we're using Lexapol, who they use this sort of AI technology to search our current policies, to search state standards, federal standards, to create policies that work for your organization. It's saving tons of time, and it's making it a lot more user friendly. Our members can search up policies by words and figure out which policies they need to read to address which topics. Microsoft Copilot is really great because it can take information on your own network, and the information that you feed it is specific to your network. So it'll retrieve results that just summarize what's happening in your city or your department. So I think it's a huge game changer. It's definitely like all these technology advances, it's going to change the way we do everything. And that's scary for some people, but I think we have to embrace it and find a way to use it for good.
So I have a question. So with incident reports, have we seen where people are using Chat GPT to do incident reports, and is it creating any kind of legal issues possibly or not, or they're just taking it word for word, or
I don't
I haven't seen that.
but I do know that, I mean, I can think of like the reporting software that has an auto narrative, like that's probably, that's
yeah,
an AI right there, right? Like that,
yeah.
I think that's been around for a long time. So maybe people are, but I don't think it's any different than the auto narrative feature that's existed for a long time, where it's just taking data and pulling it together. Now, if we can impart anything onto, you know, firefighters, is that you better be reading it for accuracy and making sure that it's relevant, because otherwise you're going to have to, you know, be held to something that you didn't mean. So hopefully anything that people are putting out there, they're reading for accuracy and making sure that it makes sense before they're saving it.
So someone, I think it was Kat, you mentioned social media. So with the invention, like Heather, you mentioned how me and you are old, but I'm just joking. How we've been in the fire department before there was like a real influence of social media and such, and cell phones, and so we're talking about technology. So, and Kat, you brought up cell phones, so people sitting at the table and such, but social media with as far as recruitment, do you think that the technology in that has helped with recruitment to get the word out? I remember before you just see like flyers or something, or it was more word or mouth, or even probably way back in the day, a newspaper article or something. And now you could look on the internet on any social media probably platform and see where the departments are hiring and such. So do you think that social media has really helped with recruitment, or has it hindered it, or a little bit of both?
I think that it's helped. I tell everyone in fire academy, especially at the end of the semester, if I know some people don't like social media, don't have social media, but I tell all of the recruits, hey, you need to download at least Facebook and follow the departments that you want to work for, because that's where they put their hiring flyers now. For example, my department, we open up on January 27th, and we've been posting for the last month, like, hey, we're going to be hiring. And people have seen it because I've gotten numerous phone calls. But I think it's the standard for recruiting now, which is kind of weird, that you have to utilize social media to find a job. But you know, it is what it is, and it's a good way to get it out there. A lot of people have gotten really creative with some of the recruiting videos that they're making. They're pretty entertaining. And then, you know, it has always, I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but in Colorado, it has always been kind of difficult to find jobs because they're not all listed in the same place. Some people use the National Testing Network. Some people just post the job on Google Jobs. Some people post it on their department website. So it does make it a little bit easier to kind of get everything in one place to see who's hiring, if you follow those departments that you're interested in. I think social media in general has been kind of a little bit of a hindrance on the fire service or any kind of first responder job, because I know that there's a lot of issues with people posting stuff on social media, not only first responders themselves, but how many people on scene, you know, we've been saying this for a while, this has been going on, have their phones out, you know, especially in a public place. If you get a call in a Sam's Club or, you know, on a busy highway, how many people are on their phones taking videos of what you're doing now? And sometimes those videos can be taken out of context or can hinder instead of help what's being videoed or photographed. So yeah, I think this social media is interesting now, along with just providing a distraction for the crews. I'm sure you guys have seen it too. You're sitting at the dinner table and you look up and all of a sudden you realize, you know, every single person's on their phone, or we're sitting in recliners at night and nobody's talking to each other. Nobody's even watching what's on TV. Everybody's just scrolling. Social media is usually what it is. Sometimes it's other stuff, but in that aspect, I think it is hindering our communication skills in departments a little bit. And I think we need to be very careful about that. I have heard, I've talked to a couple captains in departments who have implemented technology policies of when you can and can't have your phone out, which, you know, you would initially hear that in and this is the way we work now, and we hate change, but I don't think it's the worst idea in the world to force your crews to have to interact with each other and have times where it's appropriate for you to kind of just disconnect and play on your phone. But I think it's important that we stay connected, especially with our crews, and keep building those relationships between us.
Kat, you made some really good points about social media, the positives and the negatives. I think if the you do see a lot of individual firefighters. I mean, I think we talked about this when we talked about social media on TikTok and such, doing things that the day in the life or this is my house kind of thing that doesn't shed the best positive light on the fire service. And then there's some that do, but I think department ran, and Chief Mozdean, you could probably uh, comment on this as well. Department ran, whether it's from your PIO or someone in your fire prevention bureau, is running the website, and they're posting like about retirements and promotions, and we went to this fire and this street may be closed and such, is the positive side. But I don't know if the positive sides actually outweigh the negative. And then there's a lot of people in certain communities, depending where you work, that don't have access to the internet on a 24/7 basis, or don't have access to computers. Or I mean, we keep mentioning cell phones, so you would think that now, as opposed to 5 to 10 years ago when social media became a big thing in the fire service and probably any industry, that more people now do have access to the internet and such because of the cell phones and such. But Chief Mosdean, do you think that ones that are ran properly is a help? Or
Oh, I think it's a huge help. I think that we have to, as the fire service changes and the people we're trying to recruit change, we have to be able to leverage technology, social medias to reach people, but also our community members. They're looking to social media for information more so than they ever were. I mean, I don't think people really, you don't go to a newspaper for current events. Like newspapers are so slow, right? So there are still people who read newspaper for content, but for recent events like or breaking news, that's not how you get it. Even TV is not breaking news anymore, right? It's these apps with real live streaming. And so I think that as a department, you have to. A department can do a really good job of highlighting the good work that their members are doing by having a well-run social media. They can do a great job of recruiting the right kind of people for their department. Even like a local union can post some really valuable information. There's oversight, and it's being done in a way that protects the privacy, and that doesn't put out information that's erroneous. I think it's incredibly valuable, and you, as a department, you have to find a way to control it, but also to make sure that you're using it responsibly.
I agree with you, Heather. It's you could post so much. A lot of people still, I think, have the perception that a fire department just goes to fires, because I'm sure you still get questions: why is there a fire engine or truck and ambulance at scenes, and why is there so many people at these medical calls and such? And like, it's a way to educate the public on this is what we do, and this is how many calls we've had this day. Because I mean, like, budgets are, I mean, it's tough right now. The budgets everywhere, people are still cutting things and such. And I think we all know once something's cut, it's hard to get it back. So you want to try to sustain what you already have. But it's like, if the community knows, especially if there's any kind of taxes on increases for taxes or something that's going to support emergency services, that the public really knows what the fire service does. It's just not going to medical calls, that they're out in the community serving the community, that they're at school events, which is serving the community, but that they do go to medical calls, they go to hazmat calls and everything
Right.
else. So
You
yeah.
mentioned cell phone cameras, and now more and more cameras are everywhere. The ring cameras, all the app I'm streaming, like everything we do is under an increased level of scrutiny because everyone can see what we're doing almost all the time. Which, if you work in a workplace, like, you're pretty much guaranteed that what happens in your office is going to stay there for the most part, right? But when you're out on the streets in public, like, anything and everything that you do can be recorded, it can be overheard, it can be duplicated. So it really puts the public servants in this position where they're under a lot of scrutiny. So
Yeah.
it's going to make us have to be more diligent and be better if we aren't already.
Yeah, I agree with you, Heather. Go.
Yeah, we are always being watched, but on the good side of that too, we have you can catch arsonists with cameras, with the cameras being everywhere, every gas station, houses, people's Ring cameras, getting footage of fires and how they started, or footage on scene. I know GoPros and helmet cams are, a really hot topic for some departments. Some departments are really for it. I think it's a great thing. Some departments are pretty nervous to use them. But you can get a lot of great footage and use that for training and, improving fire skills. And it can be used in a really great way to help out.
Kat, you just kind of segued into the next question about helmet cams. Like how some departments are hesitant to use them. I mean, especially who's providing it? Is it the individual's own camera? I know when I used to work, we had issues with this where people just started all of a sudden wearing them, and then they were posting the footage on their own social media page, or they were sending it to someone else that was posting it and such. And it's a great way for the public to see, I mean, what we go to and when we respond to a scene and stuff. But then on the opposite side of that is also, it's like if you don't really know and you're just watching it, how dangerous it looks. So so it's like, do you want to put the whole camera, the whole footage on there, or do you want to kind of edit it so it's like the members of the community aren't seeing some of the stuff and some of the wordage that may be used and such on there? Um, Chief Mozdean, you have anything to add about cameras?
I think it can be a great training tool. I think any cameras, using drones to film, all of it can be really great for training. Just like everything else, you just need to make sure that you're protecting that information from getting in the wrong hands. And that's hard when people start posting things on social media, because once it's out there, you can't ever bring it back in.
Yeah.
Future lawsuit, or if some information comes up, or if somebody notices, something on there that puts one of our citizens at risk, it's really hard to get that back. So the sort of gatekeeping needs to be at the front end. But I do think that it's an incredibly valuable tool for firefighters to learn, and for all of us to learn from other departments too. So it's really valuable.
And you just made a good point, Heather, learn from other departments. And I mentioned that how departments have social media pages that are ran by a PIO or somebody, communications or somebody, and you watch them and you can learn things. But then on the other side of that too, then you have people sitting there criticizing firefighters sometimes are our worst enemies. They're sitting there criticizing them, why did they do this, why didn't they do that? When you're not there, it's not in real time. You're not seeing, like, they've probably edited that video and you don't know what the real conditions were when they arrived and stuff. So I agree there's positives and negatives of everything, but I do agree that cameras, you can learn from the cameras. And it's a great, especially if you're a large department and you have individuals that are at slower stations that aren't really responding to a lot of calls. When you do an after action review, put the footage in there, and this is like, this is what we saw, or this is, why we did A, B, or C or such, instead of just sitting there talking about it and drawing a picture on a whiteboard of this is what we saw when we actually arrived. It gives you real life, video of what occurred. So I talked about wearable technology, the new modern firefighter gear, which has wearable devices that monitor vital signs and environmental conditions. Do either of your departments have access to this, or have you heard about it, or?
I've definitely heard about it in Colorado. West Metro out here recently, one of our fire departments out here changed their start time to 9 a.m. And they did that after having their firefighters wear tracking watches for a certain amount of time. I believe it was like over a year. And a lot of departments I've heard have done the same thing to track how their firefighters are recovering and track their sleep. And that's the data that they use to change their start time from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. to try to improve that, to improve firefighter recovery and the quality of firefighters' sleep. We don't have watches that we all wear. I think everyone in my department just happens to wear some kind of fitness tracking watch at this point, personally. But we do health physicals every year, and there's the same thing, monitors that track us during our health physicals, figure out VO2 max, and use that data to compare. So kind of similar, but I think it's a great tool. I think that this is opening up a huge window of opportunity for us into firefighter wellness. And, you know, we've been fighting on the mental health front for so long to try to improve mental health for first responders, but really it's the bigger picture of overall wellness, which is why so many people are going just from the traditional peer support program or having a clinician to full wellness programs, because I think we all, you know at this point, it's everything that takes a part in it. It's your physical health, your financial health, your sleep, that really makes or breaks how your firefighters are performing. So I think it's just awesome that we're tracking all of this data now and using it to help improve the quality of firefighters' life, because ultimately you take care of your firefighters better. And even if it's something as simple as, tracking, improve their sleep, people are going to feel better. People are going to go home more well rested, and if they're performing better on their 4-day or their whatever schedule you're on their days off, then they're going to perform better at work.
Yeah, I'll chime in too. I've heard of the technologies. We're not, as a department, we haven't embraced any of them. I mean, besides like a pass device, a heads up display, like those kind of things. But in terms of like body metrics, we haven't employed any of that. I think it is valuable data. I think that, an incident commander could be overwhelmed with the data at this point. Like, if you were looking at the heart rates of your firefighters, it might make it a little bit more difficult. To Kat's point, though, I think a lot of people are wearing watches, they're monitoring their sleep and their exercise. And there's a lot of things that people are doing to take better care of themselves. And I think at some point it will become an overall picture in the fire department. We do medical screening for hazmats and stuff, but not, not routine for firefighters. And I do think it might, like, initially, if you introduce that, it might be of concern to some people, some people who maybe don't want an incident commander seeing what their heart rate is or their level of exertion. So yeah, I think that there will be a time where that becomes more broadly utilized, but we're not there yet.
You both made some really good points. I know I was reading an article about some departments in Texas, and there's one that starts at noon now because of the like you were talking about, the sleep deprivation and such. But once again, schedules are being talked about. I think like 5-6 years ago, it was everybody wanted to go to the 48-96 where you work 2 days and then you're off 4 days. That was the big thing. And people were now the newest one is 24, work 24 and 72. And there's extensive studies that the first day you're really not even recovering anything. So then you get the 2 days off. And with the 48 hours, depending where you work, the amount of calls and such you're going on, it's going to take you 2 days of the 96 days to recover, unless you're at a slower station, not going on a lot of runs and such. So I think that because of technology, I think departments are now kind of realizing the importance of sleep deprivation and the recovery time that it's going to take someone to recover from instances if they're running all day for 2 days in a row. We kind of talked a little bit about AI and such, but for training purposes, how has training with technology changed? I mean, Heather, I know when we came in, we were in the same department for the longest time. All training was in person. We had to go down to the training division, go out of service, and sit in, listen to somebody teach us something, or we went to another station and 2 stations would collaborate with some training and such. And then I think the first kind of online training I think we ever did in our department was Target Solutions. So how has the introduction of technology really kind of just changed training?
Yeah, I think it's totally transformed it. I mean, we have the ability to record training, to do live training. I mean, look at this conversation that we're having right now. Just the ability to have Zoom meetings and trainings, to record things, to interact in real time. It's totally transformed it. the technology with fire simulation is markedly different. Target solutions, vector solutions, like they have a ton of training on there, and people sharing information and training incidents, is just it's transformed it. So I think it's, by and large, it's been for the good. However, there's something to be said about getting people together and doing hands-on training that should not be replaced by a lot of these digital platforms. And I think it's really easy to fall into that trap of, oh, we can just do a video and send it to people. But getting your hands on it and actually, like actually pulling hose or actually going down into wherever you're going, you can't replicate that through an online training. So I think it's great for some things, but we can't lose sight of the fact that this is a physical job, and sometimes you have to actually do it in order to practice doing it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. The hands-on training is so necessary, and I think it's easy to slip into that habit of, with all of the technology we have at our fingertips now, like, hey, it's a cold day outside, or everybody's tired. Let's just do a tabletop training, which are really great to include, but you just got to make sure that you're getting out there, getting your hands on, and that's a priority. I think one other thing that's been awesome through the training aspect is things such as like the UL studies that influence the way that we perform tactics now, and how much we know about the tactics that we're using and how much they've changed over the year just because of these studies. And I think so many of these different studies of how fire behavior works and how things burn now and how firefighters respond when they're performing these tests are just so critical for us to overview and include into our training now, and really shape how we're going to do things as a department. But yeah, I think the technology has been great in this. My department started making training videos last year, which I know a ton of departments have. And back when I was in academy, I would look up departments training videos just to see like, oh, okay, like what was that skill again? How was that done? When I just had questions about stuff. I think it's great to have that information at our fingertips now, to be able to have other resources of how to do things, what everybody else is doing, and being open-minded and looking over other departments and other areas of the country or even the world and what fire tactics they're using.
Yeah, Kat, you're totally right. When I think about the amount of information that you can consume now, if you're interested in learning about it, like, previously you had to read, and it was dependent on how fast of a reader you are, or if you had access to the right books or materials. But now you can find anything you're interested on. You can find a video about it or somebody talking about it. And so, it's great, but also you have to be able to filter, like, well, is that legit or is it not? Is what they're saying relevant to me and my department? And so to your point, like the science-backed studies, NIST, UL, like those are really great. But there's a tremendous amount of information that then with a little bit of criticism or scrutiny, you can decide whether it's good information for you in a way that we did not have, 20-something years ago.
Yeah, I think it helps a lot too. I mean, you get your fire book. You start with your whatever fire book that you start with in academy, and you read that, and that's your basic stuff. And I think it helps with some of the stuff that you move on to after you get out of academy. You go through your probationary year, and then you start learning and diving deeper into maybe subjects that interest you, like different kinds of going deeper into ventilation and why we do ventilation, or forcible entry tactics. Like you may only learn a small portion of through the lock when you're in fire academy. A lot of times you're just forced indoors. You may talk about other tactics, but being able to advance your skills and truly start to learn and understand the why, I think, is something that we can't get out of some of those basic fire books. So advancing yourself as a firefighter, once you get through that basic stuff, it really makes it possible for you to do that, and for you to just go down every rabbit hole of, every little specialty that you're interested in, or every little thing that excites you about the fire service. And I think it's just such a cool fire service now, like a cool world. It's unlimited, whether you're looking at UL studies, whether you're following some of these training cadres on social media. 'Cause I follow a ton of the training cadres from around the country, and man, they just make just awesome videos. They just put out great stuff of just talking about, what they're doing and filming their trainings. And I think it's a great way for everybody in the fire service to have one big discussion of like, hey, what are we doing? What can we do better? How can we keep people safer? How can we take care of each other? How can we better take care of our citizens?
Yeah, I mean, I think I know when I was we never thought to look at YouTube videos. I mean, you could Google YouTube for anything and everything, how to do anything. And but Chief Mosey, you made a good point of, is it applicable to my department? So if you are watching it, but sometimes it's good to watch other things to, you could take something out of something and modify it to your own department. But you're right, you could sit there and watch YouTube videos on anything, where before you'd have to go get a book and read about it. And some people learn better by visualization. So if you're actually watching it, and so I think it's good that we do have the ability to do all this for our training, but you both made good points. It's also good to get your hands on things, because if you're not doing things, it's like you're going to forget how to do it. It's human nature if you're not continually pulling the hose line and such and advancing it. I mean, some things are indebted in our head from more in the training division and stuff, but if we haven't been to a fire in a long time and we haven't touched hose for a while, it's going to probably impact our performance slightly. So we talked about training and such, but yeah, how about EMS technology? It's evolved hundredfold. I think we all used to watch a show. What was it with Roy and what was his name? Roy and Emergency, the show Emergency. Cat, you're probably way too young to know what I'm talking about. This show Emergency, where they had the big box and they were like calling the doctor and they really never said what they were doing. But think about technology and EMS. How has that evolved?
We do, so we outsource our ambulances. We're a non-transport department, but we're pretty familiar with the stuff that they use now. And even like their systems now, their monitors connect to their phones, and if they need some kind of cardiac alert, they can send the 12 lead strips directly to the doctor on the phone now, along with all of the patient's information. Same with stroke alerts, they can instantly contact those doctors, and we don't have to necessarily transport our patient to a stroke center. With technology and computer screens, we can bring them to, pretty much any hospital, and they can contact, the doctor that they need to get in contact with and do a more thorough assessment to get people care faster. So I think from what I've seen overall, technology in EMS has been awesome and is providing people with better care and better, faster solutions to their emergencies.
Yeah, we also are not a transport agency, but we have paramedics on all of our apparatus. And just this last year, we upgraded our video laryngoscope. So, you can actually visualize your tube going through the cords. You can record that and send it with your EKG to the hospital so that they can verify that the tube was in fact placed correctly. The technology is amazing. The ability to just document your PCR on a tablet instead of having to write it on paper. I mean, yeah, it's amazing, the technology with needles and IOs and manual or automatic CPR machines. Like it is changing so fast. And I think the advances that we're going to see in the next couple of years, like we can't even imagine what those are. But it's amazing. It's providing really good care to our citizens. And it's been a total game changer.
It's evolved a lot since Roy and Johnny on Emergency.
Yes.
Sorry. So, so we talked about what we haven't talked about, but we're going to talk about it now. About because of technology and stuff, we now know about decontamination of gear and the apparatus through studies of how long things stay on gear and on the apparatus and such. I don't know, Heather, I think when we first came in, cancer wasn't really talked about. Deconning the we've talked about this in other shows about decon and the gear, our own gear turnouts and stuff. It was like a badge of honor if you had dirty gear, dirty helmet and such, and then apparatus being dirty. I mean, you didn't think about it. Your thought was to hurry up and get back in service. And now because the advancement of technology and studies, the UL studies and such, how Kat's talked about, we now know about cancer. So how do we think, I mean, I don't want to word this. So the decontamination of gear and the apparatus, we have clean gear initiatives and some apparatuses are built differently because of cancer and stuff where the gear isn't stored in the cab of the engine, it's stored in a compartment and such. So how do we still, I think there's still, just by watching videos and such and seeing people actually out in my own community with dirty equipment on and such, how do we instill in our members the importance of decontamination of the apparatus, of the gear and stuff? I mean, do we use videos, technology? How do we, I mean, it still seems like it's an issue. I could be way off base here, but from what I'm seeing, it still seems like it's an issue.
I think it's trending in the right direction. I think it's, I don't think we're going to get full compliance, you know, anytime soon. Because there still is a little bit of, maybe apathy by some people, maybe just, you know, maybe it's lazy. There's still a lot of reasons, I think, why. Maybe you don't have an extra set of turnouts that day, or, you know, there are still some reasons, but I think by and large it's trending in the right direction where people have recognized they've known someone who have gotten job-related cancer. There's been enough stories around the fire department about how we should be, you know, taking better care of ourselves. So I think it's trending in the right direction. We have a lot of work to do, but I think we're getting there through these things that we're trying to purchase and to keep our firefighters safe, you know, getting PFAS out of turnouts, clean cabs, making sure people are deconning, having 2 sets of turnouts, having extractors or cleaning services, all these things to try to keep our people safe. And then you just have to continue to try to push the culture to get it to change. And I think it is. I think it's going in the right direction.
So one of the big things I think we've seen, especially in California, Heather, I think everybody knows California gets wildfires year round now pretty much, is the use of drones and such. So do you think that wildland firefighting has seen a more robust use of technology, or was the first to use it as opposed to structure firefighting, or is it kind of equal, or the innovations that wildland firefighters are using now?
I'll start with just a little inject that I think sort of explains this phenomenon and sort of the whole public safety paradigm. I think people in general don't think they're going to be victims of structure fires. They just don't think it's going to happen to them. I think people will get concerned that they may be a victim of crime, and so therefore they'll always support, you know, the police department. But I think by and large, people don't think that they're going to be in a structure fire in their lifetime. Now, with these wildland urban interface fires, I think people are realizing that due to some external force that doesn't affect their decisions, they may be subject to a wildland fire. So I think that there is just a little bit more, attention to wildland fires, but I don't think the technology that fire departments are embracing go from everything from, you know, earlier notification, you know, the information that we're getting on our devices. We're using, you know, predictive lighting to get our apparatus there faster. You know, we use a program called Light AI. There's a lot of technologies that are going into structure fire, but I think wildland fires have garnered so much attention with the Palisades fire and some of these other fires. So there are technology advances that are sort of gaining traction in those ways because people feel like that could happen to them, or, you know, they feel helpless in that way. So I do think that it's happening. I mean, drones are much more valuable outside because they get an aerial view, where in a structure fire, it's happening inside. You can't fly drones inside. But there are some really amazing technologies in terms of early fire detection. Earlier this week, I went to a presentation from this company called Seneca that they're building firefighting drones. So these drones actually carry water and foam, and they can be dispatched, and they have they can detect a heat signature, and they can work with very little sort of piloting to go and put out these fires in the incipient stages. So it's a lot of technology being devoted to wildland fires because people are concerned it may happen to them.
Thermal imaging, we talked about wearable cameras, but thermal imaging cameras have changed as well. And I know some departments have them where it's mandatory they take a reading before they enter the structure to get a reading on the tick camera. So how has thermal imaging enhanced firefighting?
I think the thermal imaging cameras are, I mean, they're just awesome now. I've only been in the fire service for 8 years, but when I first started, the quality of the picture and the size of them and the ease of use, I bring a tick with me on every fire, and everyone in my department wears ticks on their pack, and they've helped me find animals. You can use them to help find victims. You can use them, if you're the attack crew, to help detect where the heat's coming from. You can help them look for hot spots and extension, and it's just such a great tool to use for something that we can't visualize with the naked eye. I think they're great, and I love using them. I always have one on my pack, and I've had great success with it.
Yeah, Kat, I agree. I think the thermal imaging cameras are incredibly valuable. The sort of pause I have with not just ticks, but with all things, are that we become overly reliant on it. And I can give you the story of one of my company officers or peers that I worked with. He told me a story about going into a cold storage facility, and they had relied on the thermal imaging camera to get where they were. Well, through some like freak thing, he happened to turn, and the hose line knocked the camera out of his hands. So he took a smooth bore, knocked the thermal imaging camera out of his hands. And luckily they had a hose line there to figure their way out. But without it, he was so reliant on that to get to where they were deep in this warehouse that he would have been lost trying to get out without it. So I just caution, and the fact that you have them on your packs is great because that can't happen, but we can't rely on technology so much that we're useless without it. And I've seen this from just like your CAD software goes down, and people no longer have the ability to write down the call information and get to a call, which like back when I started, like that happened all the time, that you would just write down the notes and then you would keep notes so that when you got back, you could transfer it to a journal or a piece of paper. But now if it's not available on your iPad, or if you're not getting real-time information, sometimes people seem paralyzed by it. So I think that we should be like celebrating all of these technologies, but we can't get to a point where we don't also know the fundamentals of how to do this job or any sort of emergency services. Some or any part of it may happen at some time in our career, whether you don't have the power to charge the batteries, or whether, there's a giant incident that knocks out your infrastructure. And so we have to be able to do the things that we need to do without technology, but also appreciate it for all that it gives us and our ability to do our jobs safer, faster, and better.
Heather, you kind of just to the next question I was going to ask: what happens when the systems that we are relying on kind of go down? And so a lot of departments are very young. And so you mentioned that when we came in, when the CAD system would go down regularly, we had the ability, we write on a piece of paper, take the rip and run and go that way and such. And it was before we had the MDTs and the cabs and such of where we were going, and look at the paper map and such. And so when the MDTs were down, you'd see people like confused of what they were supposed to do. Like, I don't know how many times you hear the MDTs are down, the MDTs are down. Okay, well, go to the map that's on the wall and try to map the route that you're going to take and such. And you're right, it's a hindrance to some degree if they're not capable of doing it. So there's some people that have come in the fire service probably that they're not used to that. They haven't been exposed to when systems go down and such of what to do. So is it something that we should like, do we do training on it in case, hey, this goes down, this is our backup plan? Or do we just hope there's someone there that's experienced or has the knowledge to how to deal with it?
I think we need to train on
I-
it. I think it always needs to be a conversation. We thankfully our cats go down all the time, so we're really good at that in my department. It happens, all technology faults, and you see a lot of people with, we're guilty of, we have mounts in our fire truck for everybody's phone, and it's really great when we're going out of district into someone else's district and we don't know exactly where we're going, but we do have to be careful utilizing those. And, somebody said the other day, turn your dang phone off. You need to know your fire district is something that this captain had told one of their firefighters. And it's true. You have to be familiar with your fire district. And we have to make sure when we have people coming on that we're teaching them, hey, these are the main roads, this is how you map, like this is what you're going to do without your technology. And the same thing goes with the ticks and anything else that we rely on. What do we do when we don't have technology? What do we do when we don't have power? What do we do when we're in unexpected situations? And I think it is important that you incorporate that kind of training into the whole department, whether it's fire, whether it's command, whether it's EMS. What do we do when things go wrong and things fail?
Yeah, I agree. I think we have to keep the conversation alive, like especially as time goes on, then make sure that people do know that when all the infrastructure breaks down, like they're still calling us or they're still needing us. So we better be able to provide service in a way that's not relying on technology. I don't know if we were going to talk about EVs, but Kat just brought up power, and
Yes.
the push for EV is real, and like I can appreciate it from like from a clean air standpoint. However, what do we do when we have apparatus and we don't have power? Like we're useless, so we have to be able to make sure that we have a backup plan, whether that's backup generators or, I mean, imagine a doomsday scenario where you have to go to work, but your electric fire engine doesn't start, right? Because you have no power. So you just need to make sure that we're building in redundancy that is not completely reliant on technology and new tech, as great as it is.
I agree with you, Heather. Like if the garage door wouldn't open, how are you going to get the apparatus door open and such? It's just like, yeah, it's like, I mean, the younger generation, they're so used to things. They come in with all this technology that they're not used to things of, okay, how are we going to make the apparatus door go up if there is no power and such? And so,
Well,
you made a good point about the EVs.
Even open a window without a button, a vehicle window without a button. So yeah, that information is dying, and we have to make sure that we keep talking about it so that people are aware.
And you don't think about it. I mean, you think about how young some departments are and such, and it's just like you're sitting there and the person's like 20, 25 years old, and you're like, wow, okay, I feel older than I am right now. But it's just like you would say something and they look at you like you're absolutely insane when you say, well, we used to go to the map and look at the address on the map and plan it out, but we know our own district or we know the district, the next two districts over and such. And they're like, well, what about MDTs and stuff? And the MDT, I go, what happens if the MDT goes down? Then what do you do? I mean, if the MDT, well, we have phones, and it's like, okay, if the phone goes, it's like it's if game, but it's like you're right. I think that as the fire service gets younger, I think one of the things that we do need to instill is to make sure that what happens if technology does go down. Heather, you made a really good point about electric vehicles. I know there's a few in the Bay Area, and there's one department in the Bay Area that has them, but it'd be interesting to see what their backup plan is if there is no electricity or such. How are they gonna, do they have a backup plan? Or if they're on a long call, what are they gonna do, So data-driven technology has helped made and Kat, you talked about a little bit about data, the collection of data and stuff because of technology and stuff, which has really helped increase the collection of data. So has this helped, do you think, we hear a lot about fire inspections in certain cities and things aren't getting inspected and such, and are we doing fire inspections and such? And so has this helped with fire inspections, with the data-driven bases that we now have? Like there's different programs out there now that I mean, Heather, we could talk about our old department. It's like everything was on paper. You get a folder and you find out when the last inspection was, and you'd go and you'd inspect that. And then they got a program and then another program and such. So has this helped with fire inspections, or has it hindered it? Or
I can say from what I've seen, I know a lot of departments use inspection software now that interacts with or maybe is in the same system as their CAD system, and it helps and ties into their pre-plans. And I think that's a really great tool. Again, with the technology, it's really important to get out in your district and get into your buildings and see it firsthand and be familiar with it, because that's the best way to learn about it. But you work for some of these really big departments where you guys have 30 plus stations. There's no way you're going to know every single building in your district, at least probably in the first 10 years, realistically, of you working there, no matter how much you go out and check everything out. So I think that the inspections and the pre-plans are helping give firefighters information that is keeping them safer, to know where these exits are and if there's hazards in the building and what kind of building, what they may be storing in there. Just stuff that helps you, attack the fire quicker, and keeps people safer on calls. So I think that tying all of that together and using the most out of your data has made a really good impact.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the pre-plan part in particular is really valuable information. Like everything though, it can't replace actually getting out there and knowing and seeing where the FDCs are, or seeing where the control rooms are. But it is valuable information. To your point, Kat, when you don't know the district or haven't been there, or it's new to you. So it shouldn't replace what we should be doing, but it's definitely valuable information to add to the arsenal.
so mostly we've been talking about just technology, how it's helped the fire department and stuff, but technology's had some good positive effects with regards to the communities we serve, such as Pulse Point and such, where communities are able to look and see possibly what's going on. I mean, can anyone think of any other positive effects technology has had as far as the fire department with technology, or if the negative points about Pulse Point or?
I think
yeah,
both. I think in addition to Pulse Point, software like Genesis, the old Zone Haven software, for notifying people of evacuations is going to be incredibly valuable. Like we talked about, people getting information, from their devices is huge. But there's a lot of other technologies that are also enhancing the community safety. I can think of the Haas alerting system as one that's been, I think, enhancing public safety, so that if your car is stopped on the freeway, it alerts other vehicles to you. There's a lot of other technologies that are helping.
Yeah, I think all of those technologies are great. I know we commonly utilize the reverse 911s for the shelter in places for situations that we have. One of the negatives I have seen, though, to the phone CAD systems, whether it's Pulse Point or Active 911, Tablet Command, whatever it is, when firefighters are able to get that software on their phone, I think it prohibits them from disconnecting on their off days sometimes, because how many times do we you may forget to turn that off when you get off shift, or maybe you don't turn it off when you're off shift, and you've got people sitting there, oh, there's a structure fire, and now they spend the next hour either listening to radio traffic or reading the call notes, or God forbid you have an injury to a firefighter in your department. Well, the second you request an ambulance for that person, the entire department is getting a notification and knows, and then your whole department's wondering, hey, well, what happened? Is this person okay? Or even any other calls, just people on their off days watching these calls and spending time when they're supposed to be disconnecting from the job and relaxing, and they're sitting there reading call notes or getting these notifications about them going off, or reminding them about their job constantly their entire time off. So That's one of the negatives that I've seen. I think it is nice, you know, like you said, I said our CAD systems go down all the time. We have them on our phones. And again, we can't be super dependent on that. But it is a really nice backup. You know, you have your officer driving, your officers reading the notes, your engineers already able to look at, you know, where their hydrants are going to be when they get on scene or before they get on scene. They can see where they're going, getting just information about the call. I think is great, but we just got to make sure that we're disconnecting when we leave work just for the overall wellness aspect of firefighters and getting a break from that.
You made a good point, Kat. And another thing with Pulse Point is I think we've all heard of the app Nextdoor. And that if you look on Nextdoor, it's like there'll be people on there. Well, what's going on at such and such a place? Like, you know, I heard sirens, and then it's like, oh, Pulse Point says this or Pulse Point says that, and then you're going to probably get your Johnny Look-a-loose and then I think Fire Watch. I think that's what it's called, where you have the ability to see where the wildland fire is also a really great help for our communities, and it's probably some information I know to get out to our communities that there is this ability to see where there is wildland fires in your area, and if there's an ability you might need to evacuate or not evacuate. We're just almost about out of time. Does anyone have anything that they wanted to add or?
No, I think the biggest takeaway from this, as Chief Mozdean said, is technology has had a really good impact on the fire service. I'm very interested to see what happens even in the next 5 years, because I think it's just going to explode in safety and firefighter wellness and the way that we do things in the fire service. But to your point, we've got to be really careful that we don't let it overtake everything that we do, that we're still getting down to knowing our district and getting hands-on training and making sure that we're still communicating with each other in the firehouse, because that's half of the fun of being a firefighter is building the relationships with the people that you work with. And we've got to make sure that we don't just get to the point where we just come to work, put our heads down, and get sucked into our phones all day.
Yeah, and extending that to the community too, right? The value that we can give the community through human interaction is something that won't be able to be replaced if we get to a point where we're utilizing robots or drones or any other sort of technology that may help us become better firefighters. We have to recognize that value in human to human connection, because it's the one thing that you can't replace with technology.
I agree. So I want to thank each guest for being part of the radio show. Thank you again to Fire Engineering for allowing us to be part of your podcast series. Thanks to all the listeners and members of Women in Fire. Remember to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Check out our website at womeninfire.org. We hope to see everybody at our international conference that will be held in September in Austin. The dates are listed on the website. It's the end of September, so we hope to see everybody there. And it's on. Thanks again to everybody for listening.